Hi, I'm Mark, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on British politics. His wife is Scotland's ex-First Minister, and Peter Murrell himself was the SNP Secretary-General for a long time. Now he had to answer questions about party finances in police custody. The husband of Scotland's ex-First Minister Sturgeon has been released after his arrest on Wednesday morning during an investigation into the finances of the governing Scottish National Party, the SNP. Former SNP Secretary-General Peter Murrell has been released without charge pending further investigation, as the Scottish police said. The police had previously announced that they had taken a 58-year-old into custody in order to question him about party finances. They searched the home of Sturgeon and Murrell in Glasgow and the SNP headquarters in Edinburgh. Murrell was the Secretary-General of the SNP for almost 25 years, until his resignation last month amid a dispute over the party's membership numbers. The SNP falsely claimed to the media that it had not lost 30,000 members. In the past, the alleged diversion of around £600,000 in donations had raised questions about Murrell. He had also failed to declare a personal loan to the party of around £100,000, which could constitute a breach of party funding transparency laws. With a multi-day visit to the British region of Northern Ireland and the EU member state of Ireland, US President Joe Biden wants to emphasize relations with the Emerald Isle. The president will be in the Northern Irish capital of Belfast on April 11th and 12th to pay tribute to the progress made since the Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago, as the White House in Washington said. Biden is proud of his Irish roots. His ancestors once emigrated from Ireland to the United States. The Treaty of 1998 ended decades of civil war in Northern Ireland between Protestant supporters of union with Britain and Catholic supporters of reunification with the Republic of Ireland. It was not initially known whether there would be a meeting in Belfast with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak or even with King Charles III, whose coronation on May 6th Biden might skip. I'll talk about this later. The British Secret Service MI5 recently increased the terror warning for Northern Ireland. Biden will then travel to Ireland on April 12th to 14th. He will discuss our close collaboration across the range of common global challenges, said his spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre. Dates are planned in the capital Dublin and in the county Louth on the border with Northern Ireland, as well as in Count Mayo in Western Ireland. There, the US president will give a speech to celebrate the deep historical ties that connect their countries and people, as they said in Washington. At least two of Biden's ancestors are of Irish origin. One migrated to the United States from the Cooley Peninsula in Louth, the other from Ballina in Mayo. Irish Prime Minister the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar called the visit a privilege and an honour. Businesses in the UK were slightly more pessimistic in March. The S&P Global Purchasing Managers Index fell 0.9 points month-on-month to 52.2 points, as S&P announced in London on Wednesday, according to a second estimate. And this confirmed a first estimate. Both the indicator for industry and for service providers fell. However, the services value points to growth with more than 50 points, while the industrial sentiment is below the expansion threshold and thus suggests contraction. The second estimate for the industry was already published on Monday. Representatives of the USA and Great Britain leave an informal meeting of the UN Security Council in protest against speeches by the Russian's Children's Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova, who is wanted by arrest warrant. When Lvova-Belova speaks during a video conference at the meeting in New York, the chairs of the two countries remained empty, as do those of Albania and Malta. Russia currently holds the rotating chair of the body, and Lvova-Belova's invitation was seen as a provocation because she is seen as a key figure in the forced deportation of Ukrainian children from the war zone to Russia. TikTok has been fined £12.7 million in the UK for breaching children's privacy. The company allowed up to 1.4 million children under the age of 13 to open an account in the country in 2020, despite its own rules prohibiting it. This was announced by the British Data Protection Authority Information Commissioner's Officer, the ICO, on Tuesday. Personal data from children was also used without parental consent, although British law requires it. TikTok has failed to implement adequate checks to identify and remove underage children from its platform, it said. While some senior executives have raised concerns internally, the company has not responded appropriately. TikTok should have known better. TikTok should have done better, said agency chief John Edwards. Our £12.7 million penalty reflects the serious impact their mistakes could have had. Originally, the authority even imposed a fine of £27 million. After objections from TikTok, however, it was decided not to pursue the preliminary findings regarding the illegal use of some data categories. In the meantime, the supervisory authority has published a code for the protection of children in the digital world. The regulations are aimed at online services such as apps, gaming platforms, and social media sites. US President Joe Biden will not attend the upcoming coronation of British King Charles III. The White House said Biden called Charles and informed him that First Lady Jill Biden would represent the United States at the ceremony in May. The US President had expressed the wish to meet Charles at another time in Great Britain. The coronation of the British King is to take place on May 6th in Westminster Abbey in London, in the presence of numerous international guests. British billionaire Richard Branson's space company Virgin Orbit, which specializes in satellite launches, has filed for bankruptcy. In the US process with protection from creditors' claims, a sale of the company is to be promoted, as Virgin Orbit announced on Tuesday. A failed satellite launch earlier this year had sent business into a tailspin. The company was spun off from Branson's other space company, Virgin Galactic, which, among other things, wants to offer tourist flights into space. Virgin Orbit had already drastically reduced the number of employees last week after it could not get fresh money. With 675 employees, around 85% of the workforce should lose their jobs. A procedure with bankruptcy protection under Chapter 11 of the US bankruptcy law is now seen as the best way for a sale, they said on Tuesday. Company boss Dan Hart pointed out that 33 satellites had been successfully put into orbit. Virgin Orbit was instrumental in attempting to launch the first satellite into orbit from UK soil earlier this year. An aircraft first brought the launch vehicle to a high altitude before it was launched, but the mission failed. In mid-March, Virgin Orbit announced that it would pause operations for the time being. The British government wants to temporarily accommodate migrants in a floating dwelling and has organized a first ship for this purpose, despite criticism from its own ranks. The Home Office has confirmed that it has leased the BB Stockholm barge in Dorset, which is set to accommodate around 500 people. Various media had previously reported on the plans. Local Conservative MPs had sharply criticized them and even threatened lawsuits. The accommodation on barges is part of a plan to detain undesired migrants arriving in the UK first in specially designed accommodation and then deport them either to their countries of origin or to Rwanda. London has a corresponding agreement with the East African country. However, due to complaints and pending checks, not a single person has been flown out. Alternative accommodation, such as barges and ferries, must be used to save British taxpayers' money and prevent Britain becoming a magnet for asylum shoppers in Europe, as the Secretary of State for Migration, Robert Jenrick, said. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on Wednesday bemoaned high government costs for hotels currently housing thousands of migrants. The floating accommodation is said to be a cheaper alternative, but the actual cost of renting the ship was not initially made public. The Conservative government wants to use all its might against unwanted migrants. Most of them should be denied the right to apply for asylum. The United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, has sharply criticized the project. Critics accuse the Tories of exaggerating the problem and of wanting to win back voters with demonstratively tough action. Because of Brexit, London no longer has a readmission agreement with the EU. And this concludes this week's report on British politics. The next one is right here in the end screen already, and I'll see you there. I'll be back.